Today we are going to explore Dash, one of the popular cryptocurrencies out there that positions itself as a digital cash of the new era. Dash is on a mission to make cryptocurrency transactions as easy and straightforward so that even your grandmother could do it. Our guest is one of the very early supporters of the project and currently a CMO at the Dash core team that leads the development and the maintenance of the network. He is also a lawyer and an economist with a solid background in business development for large telecom companies. Without further ado, please welcome Fernando Gutierrez. Hello, Fernando. Thank you very much for being here with us today and welcome to the Online Crypto Summit.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a big pleasure.
So can you talk a bit about yourself and about your background and how did you get involved with the Dash project?
Well, I got involved because I'm very bad at sleeping and I'm very curious. So by training, I'm a lawyer and an economist. I had my own business after a long career in sales and marketing. I started a business, but I've always been very curious. And once, I think it was something like 2012, I listened an interview with Gavin Andresen, the Bitcoin developer in an economics podcast I used to listen. And I got interested in this space. Back then it was very difficult to buy. I didn't really get involved. When I was ready to buy, it has gone up from $8 to 14 or something like that, Bitcoin. And I was like, this is obviously a bubble. So I didn't buy, and I lamented that all my life. But anyway, after that, I kept an eye on the space, and at some point I decided to just get involved. Even if I had lost the opportunity to buy Bitcoin at $14, it made sense. So in 2014, early 2014, I believe I started doing some more research. I discovered that this was all for me a hobby because I'm very interested in economics and technology. And this was something I used to do during my nights. And then in 2014, I started doing some research on cryptocurrencies again. I discovered the Dash project, Darkcoin, back then. I really appreciated the openness of the lead developer, Evan Duffield. He had committed himself to work for the project full time for 2 years. He was giving his own name. He was very accessible, and that was very important for me because I saw some commitment from the founder of the project. I saw a few things I could be doing to help the project. I did them on my own, and then I contacted him. He appreciated the work I had done. We started to bond together very well and work together. And one thing led to another, and suddenly I was putting more time in Dash than in any other activity. And I officially joined the team sometime in 2014. I was the first non-developer, and I've been doing different stuff around since then. I'm in the board. Currently, I'm also the chief marketing officer. It's been
pretty much you're with them from the beginning.
Not the beginning, because it was launched in January 2014. I discovered it probably late February, early March. I started to invest, trade, but the involvement stepped up little by little. So probably I was very involved by the summer or something like that, actively managing projects.
So can you explain what Dash is in 5 words?
Yeah, Dash is the best decentralized platform for payments. I don't know if those are 5 or 7, but it's sort enough.
Well, sounds very interesting. So how do you plan to bridge that gap between tech enthusiasts and the everyday person?
We are focusing a lot on ease of use. I think tech features are great and we love them, but they are only good if people actually use them. So there is 2 parts to gaining adoption. On one side, you need merchants, and to get merchants, you need to do certain things, and on the other side, you need users. You need to work on both sides in parallel, because merchants need some density of users and users need some density of merchants, because they all work together. So we are working on both fronts at the same time. The merchant side, or businesses, you need ease of integration. You need a project that is easy to work with, that businesses can adopt and can trust. For that, we have a very professional organization. We've created a company. The developers there are developers that are getting paid. There's a business development team that works on integrations and support our partners, and that's very important for that side of things. Businesses like to work with businesses, not with. We love decentralized communities and all that, but a business needs reliability. So in that side, we're having that. On the user side, we're working on extreme ease of use. Cryptocurrencies at the moment are extremely difficult to use. It's very painful. It's dangerous at times because you can lose funds if you make mistakes. So our next major release of the software, which is happening during 2018, it's a phased release. We codename it Evolution. It's a release that changes how the user interacts with the blockchain. Up until now,
what do you mean by that?
If you want, right now, if you want to use cryptocurrencies how they are intended, completely decentralized without trusting third parties and all that, you need to download the blockchain. That's a huge usability hurdle to start. So thanks to our different network structure, you will be able to connect to nodes that have the blockchain themselves, but you don't connect to one, you connect to several at the same time, so you don't need to trust anyone. And those are selected randomly. It's a complex process, but that means that you don't need to download the blockchain, and then you can have the full, and you don't need to trust anyone. You have the full benefit of crypto, the promise of decentralization, without the problem of having the blockchain. That also is very advantageous if you want to grow the block size, because if one of the limits to grow the blocks is that the blockchain would grow too much, and then users would be harmed. If they don't need to download the blockchain, only nodes that in our network, by the way, are getting paid for their work, so it's not, they have an incentive to keep up. They only then need to really download the blockchain, and the user doesn't need to. And the other part of this release is something we call Dash Drive, that creates a new layer in the network that stores user information, and there are blockchain accounts that are not exactly stored in the blockchain, but are validated by the blockchain. This will allow us to have, and this is already functional, we publish in our YouTube channel the first demo. What this system does is that you can have blockchain accounts, and tied to that, then you have usernames instead of super long addresses that no one wants to work with. And by the way, with a username, there are many addresses below it. It's not like you just associate a username to an address. There are many of them going on behind as much as you need. You can have usernames. You can have a password recovery, something as simple as that. You can have recurrent payments. You can do many things, and the best of that is that we don't need to develop all of them, because the platform is completely open, so anyone can develop their own decentralized application for Dash. It's not the same than applications you may develop for Ethereum, for example. It's not smart contracts. We call them data contracts, because the computing happens at the client side, at your wallet, not in the blockchain, so it's more efficient. But anyone can come and develop on top of this new layer we are launching this year, and that should open a whole new set of possibilities. Those ones I've mentioned, the usernames, of password recovery, or recurrent payments, that kind of things are just the beginning. Developers can come up with many things because they have a very powerful network with a very flexible structure, and all that will benefit the user, because then they can have those advantages that we are all used to have at the services we use every day, but they are all centralized. I mean, you go to a Spotify and you log in with your username and your password, and when you forget it, you just click reset password. that's what people expect, and that's something we'll be able to do. Or if you subscribe to something, you want to forget about those recurrent payments. You can't do that with crypto. We will be able to offer you that. So all these small sacrifices that people need to make to use crypto will disappear, and then using crypto it will be as easy as using PayPal, and that's the big part we are working on. And also in parallel and complementing the part we are working with businesses, I said that we are working very active on integrations. Those integrations also help the distribution, which is it's also very important for the users, because they not only need to be able to use it easily and in a high density of merchants, they need to be able to get Dash easily. So that partnership activity will also benefit the distribution of the coin, and hopefully we'll be able to put Dash in the hands of millions of users easily with very low friction. So if we're solving the distribution, the ease of use, and the density of merchants and users.
Very nice. So when we talk about the merchants, there is one question that pops in my mind. How do you handle returns, for example, with cryptocurrency? Is that a feature that Dash allows for? Let's say I buy something from a merchant and I want to exchange it or return it or anything like that. How does that work on the blockchain?
That we can do with this new system. You could enter into contracts that have an arbiter or something like that. I was saying, yes, that's one of the features that will be possible with this new system I talked before. You will be able to make a payment instead of in the standard crypto way that you will always be able to use. I mean, you can do a final transaction that cannot be reverted, but you will also be able to pay through one of these applications that will provide you with some consumer protection, because there will be an arbiter for disputes or escrow or something like that. A developer will program that, and then maybe the merchant will say, instead of sending to this address, send through this system, and then you can have that protection for the consumer, because merchants love the impossibility of a chargeback with crypto, and that is good for certain things, but in some occasions it's good that also the consumer is protected. So the system will allow us for both options to coexist, and everyone can decide which one they can use.
So these additional apps, data contracts, as you call them, so will they at the same time preserve the security of the blockchain? How will that work?
Yes, this is still in a very early stage. As I said, we just released our first demo. We are aiming at releasing the MVP, the minimal viable product, in the second half of this year, 2018. But yes, everything still has the same security you have in the blockchain, because this new layer of objects that are stored in the network is validated in the blockchain. What we do is, instead of storing everything in the blockchain, which is expensive, this second layer stores there all this data and the contracts, and then there is it hashes the information and it's validated in the blockchain, and then you just store the hash in the blockchain. So it's much more efficient, but you still have everything validated from the blockchain. So it's absolutely secure. Of course, like any new software, there will be problems along the way, like there are still with all cryptocurrencies. Sometimes we discover vulnerabilities or problems, so we work them out. We are pioneering the space, and obviously things will happen, but the setup is as secure as any other that you can see.
Very, very nice. So can we also touch a bit the question about privacy and the concept of coin mixing that you utilize? Can you explain how that works and what's the importance of privacy on the blockchain?
Perfect. Yeah. First thing, why privacy? There are many people that say, if you don't have anything to hide, why do you want it?
Yeah.
If you are acting legally, why do you want privacy? We don't believe in that. We think privacy is a human right. The United Nations has recognized that in the past. We all act differently when we know we are being watched. So having some space only for us, it's important for everything. And having said that, it's also important for more practical reasons. Let's say user security. I mean, if everyone can know what you have, and that's very easy in the blockchain, because yes, you have the funds in these very long addresses, but the moment you tie one of those to your name, it could be through a purchase and you give the merchant the funds and your address and your name, or it could be because you trade at an exchange, or many situations in which you associate, then you can be traced back.
Yeah, or simply trace your IP address.
Yeah, and that's very dangerous. So and there's already been instances of early Bitcoin adopters being targeted because of their funds, because criminals know they have them. So likewise, you don't want your bank statement published online. You don't want all your financial transactions being traceable online. But unlike other privacy, there are some privacy-focused coins out there. This is only one of our features that focus on obscuring everything. We don't believe in that either, because there's also a place for transparency and accountability. It is very important to keep your privacy for what I say, security. Also, not every government is trustable, and there are already companies working with private businesses or governments, helping them mine the data in the blockchain. So you need to be careful with that. But sometimes you need accountability and you need traceability. Exchanges need to know where the funds come from. They have their KYC and AML obligations. So our protocol is transparent by default, and only if the user wants, they can start the coin mixing. And now I will explain what it is. Coin mixing is just a way to cut with the history of your funds. That way you are in the same position as a user than, for example, an exchange. Exchanges analyze where your funds come from. And if they detect some problem because they are associated with something that it's illegal, they will probably close your account and reject your funds. But you may not know that those funds come from this kind of situation. So by being able to cut with the history, you are protecting yourself, because you don't have the tools they have to really analyze where the funds you get are coming from. What this does is that you mix your funds with other people in the network. This is all done at the protocol level in a completely trustless way. This means that you don't need to trust anyone. In Bitcoin, there's mixing services, but usually you need to send them the funds and they send you back other funds, and you need to trust they are going to deliver, and that's dangerous. In our case, it's in the protocol. The funds never leave your wallet, but they get mixed with other people's funds. What this does is that you end up with some funds that no one can know if are yours or from any other person that participated in that mixing session. We do one mixing session after another one. So in the end, the possible number of origins for your funds is very high. We're talking thousands. And then that gives you what's called plausible deniability. I mean, now no one can prove that you've done something or not, and you can be safe, but it's not like obscuring everything and encrypting and then no information out there. Everything is out there, but it's confused. So you can be protected like that. If you want to understand it better, let's make an analogy with cash. Let's say I have 47 euros in my wallet. So I want to mix them. I go to a table where other two users also want to mix them. So I take out my 3 10-euro banknotes and I put them on the table. The other users do the same. One of them puts 5 and the other puts 2. We mix all the banknotes together, and then I take 3. The one that put 5 takes 5, and the one that put 2 take 2. Now we don't know if the 3 banknotes I get are the ones I put in the beginning or are different ones. So I've cut the trace at that table. I will also go to another table next to that one, in which I'll put 4 5-euro banknotes and do the same with the 5-euro banknotes. And then there will be another table for coins, because the mixing is always done in amounts that are equivalent. to make things safer. So you do many mixing sessions in parallel, and then when you go up from that table, you go to another table with your same 10 euro banknotes, and you do the same, and then you go to another one and do the same. So by doing this many times, you open the tree of possibilities, and then you are protected. But this is not anonymity. This is not obfuscation of the blockchain like other protocols do. This is just a user protection tool, because we believe privacy is the right we all have. And we are not actively chasing a market for super obscure things or dark market. That's not.
So in a way, when you do this mixing, you're protected because no one really know who sent this particular amount. But if there is a need to know that, there is a way to how do you say that, to unmix them so that you know who put what into those transactions.
No, there's no way to unmix. The only thing you are going to get is a tree of possibilities. I mean, there's no way if I mix funds with you and someone else, no one can know what funds are from who, because every mixing session is coordinated by a different node, and they are made. You can make up to 8 mixing sessions in a row. So there's no going back. You mix them, and what you get is a tree of possibilities, but you can't unmix.
So from accountability standpoint, how do you know if you need to know who made, let's say, a fraudulent transaction or if you need to trace that, how do you do that?
There are certain things you can do to analyze funds, but this is a feature that is pretty strong, so you can't just undo it. So if someone uses it to protect him from law enforcement, there's nothing we can do to trace that. Having said that, we believe it's more important to protect the average user, even if that leaves room for this to happen, than not protect the average user and then not avoiding this to happen, because the criminals already know how to use Bitcoin in an anonymous way. I mean, Bitcoin is not private, but there are things you can do to make it private. It's complicated, but it can be done. And criminals already know how to do that. So what we provide is the average users with some easy to use feature that protects them. And that's the only thing we provide. If someone used private send, which is how we call this feature, consistently to try to hide himself from law enforcement, there could be things that could make him appear behind the transactions, because, as I said, for example, let's say you are among the possible 1,000 origins for one transaction, and then 3 months after that, you are again among the possible origins for another illegal transaction, and then 3 months after that, it happens the same.
Once so you're looking for a pattern.
Yeah, once you have that pattern, you could get some clues. Yeah. Of course, it would always be a probabilistic thing, but there are things that can be done. So, I mean,
it's a clue for further investigation.
Yeah, and law enforcement needs to do their job. Yeah. So we believe we need to protect our users, and that's why we have this feature. It's not designed for criminals. If I were a criminal, probably I would prefer other things. In fact, most crime in the world is conducted in cash or through bank accounts.
Yeah, but it's a common misconception that it's now done in cryptocurrencies. Like I hear people call it the criminals' cash or stuff like that.
Yeah, they call it many things because journalists loved a headline. But truth is, I still haven't seen news about a big drug ring being arrested and then not having huge stacks of cash. I mean, or a bank account in the Cayman Islands or in the British Virgin Islands. In the end, the criminals move money through the traditional financial system. Many banks have get have been fined with huge fines, by the way. I'm talking billions, because they've helped launder criminals' money. From corrupt politicians to drug dealers. And that's happened with all the major banks, or most of the major banks in the world at some point in the last decade. So saying that cryptocurrencies are for criminals is a terrible mischaracterization of reality. But yeah, they do it. So we need to be explaining each and every time, because this space brings to the average user much more than the risks it creates by giving you
Yeah,
tools.
so thank you for touching upon that, because I think it's very important. All right, so going back to Dash, it started out as a fork of Bitcoin and Litecoin code base. Can you explain what does that mean to the average user, to a person who doesn't have much of a blockchain or overall tech experience?
Perfect. Yeah, that's a very interesting question, because there are a lot of misconceptions with the word fork, because there are two types of fork. One is the one we did, which is an open source concept. When software is open source, you can fork it. This means you take the code, you copy it, and then you modify it and launch your own project. That's what Dash did. In the beginning, it was a fork from Litecoin, which was a fork from Bitcoin. But then we changed things, so we went back to the original Bitcoin code base, because they were doing some work in their code that we wanted to keep up with. Meanwhile, Litecoin code is mostly, it was mostly abandoned. Now they have some development, but much less than Bitcoin. So we prefer to be a direct fork from Bitcoin. So that's one very specific thing. You copy the code, you modify it, and you launch. That's what we
So
did.
here is where I get confused. How is that different than smart contracts, for example?
No, it has nothing to do with smart contracts.
Okay.
Smart contracts is something you can do with blockchain, but when I'm talking a fork, is just, I mean, a code is just a group of files, text files with some instructions that the computer is gonna understand. In open source world, they are usually published on the internet. The main site is GitHub. So if you go to GitHub, you can see all the Bitcoin code. Everything is there. You can see every line of code. This is super powerful. This is why it is so secure. And then you can click a button and fork it. What it does is that it creates a copy of all those files, and you give them a new name, and you start coding on top of that. And that's what we did. Then there's a different concept that it's a blockchain fork, which is something that many people have seen. We saw the Ethereum and Ethereum Classic fork. This last year, we saw the Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash fork, and Bitcoin Gold, and we'll see more of those. In those cases, what happens is that instead of a new project launching a blockchain from scratch, what they do is they say, this is the Bitcoin code and this is its blockchain. And from now on, I make a change and I separate from that blockchain, but I respect all the history. So it's a different way of forking, because you fork a project that is ongoing, not its code, it's the project itself. You change something, so you separate. You are no longer compatible with them. In the case of Ethereum, it was a part of the community not agreeing to a blockchain rollback they did because of a hack. And then they went back in history of the blockchain, they canceled transactions, so the hack had not happened. And some people thought that that was not good, because the blockchain is about immutability, and if you change the past, then you are doomed. And then they said, okay, you can do that rollback, but I won't respect that. From now on, I'll keep with the original blockchain and you can do whatever. And that's Ethereum Classic. And in the case of Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, some people didn't want SegWit and they wanted to scale or to grow the block. So they said, okay, here we part ways, and both blockchains separated at some point. So it's a very different thing to what we did. In that case, you have the exact same code. You start to build on top with new updates, but you respect the history. We created a project from scratch, but using the code of Bitcoin, and then coded on top of that many new features that we were thinking of.
So can you explain what's the concept of master nodes in the Dash network?
Absolutely. Master nodes are a special type of node that gets paid in exchange of doing certain work for the network. That's the difference with Bitcoin nodes, which don't get paid. In Bitcoin, all the payments go to the miners, which secure the network. And that is very powerful. That gives them a lot of security. But by not paying the nodes, they only rely on volunteers for that layer of the network. And then you can't really scale the blockchain, because then the nodes would get new cost, and that would be expensive for them, and they would disconnect. So the number of nodes will reduce. In our case, we split those new coins between master nodes and the miners, and that way they can scale and provide us with very powerful servers. There's also another part of the new coins that gets reserved for projects that work for the Dash ecosystem, but that's a different part we can talk later. But the master nodes then, because they get paid, you can expect many things from them. One of them is that they collateralize a big amount of coins. They need to prove they have 1,000 coins. This is done for protection of the network, because if all nodes have a lot of coins themselves, it's very difficult for someone to set up a high number of malicious nodes and try to subvert the network, because it will be too expensive. If it's free to set up a node, you could, with a low budget, maybe set up 1,000 nodes, malicious ones, and then create problems in the network. If you need to pay a high amount to have one, then that's not feasible. And then we require them to have very powerful servers to perform all the services we need them to perform. One is private send, we talked before. They coordinate all those mixing rounds. Another one is instant send. We can have completely secure, instantly confirmed payments thanks to masternodes. You don't need to rely on confirmations from miners and wait for those. We can do that in a second.
No, so that's very powerful, especially for merchants.
Yeah, that is as fast as a credit card, and that is very important. And then we also have a very powerful governance that relies on these masternodes. So it's a very important layer of the network for us. At the moment, we have around 4,700, so 4,700 masternodes. That's a very powerful layer, and a lot of servers for the developers to build on top new services.
So you mentioned that they also participate in governance, and I know that part of the mining rewards go to a pool for projects and other services. Can you explain the concept of that and how this self-governance work? What is the role of the master nodes, and what kind of projects do you support and all that?
Yes. As I said before, the new coins that are created, what is usually known as the block reward, is split into three parts. 45% goes for the miners, another 45% goes for the masternodes, and then 10% is kept in what we call the treasury. That 10% of coins at the moment is around $3 million per month at current prices. So there is a system in which anyone, including you if you wanted, you can do a proposal to the network. A proposal is just a budget you request to do something that you say you want to do. And then the masternodes get to vote. And the projects that get more votes are the ones that get that 10% that was reserved on the treasury. That happens on a monthly basis. So we see all kinds of projects. There is no requirement in terms of what the project needs to be about, but obviously masternodes are going to vote more projects that benefit the Dash ecosystem. And if it doesn't benefit the Dash ecosystem, even if there are no more projects, they will not vote for them. And then those coins will not get created, making the supply lower and the circulating coins more valuable. So it's a very powerful system. We use that, for example, to pay for the development team. I get paid a salary that comes from that. We make a proposal for team salaries. And then if masternodes agree we are doing a good job, they approve that proposal.
That's a very interesting approach.
But we compete with any other organization in the ecosystem. This is not like an ICO that the team keeps all the funds for themselves.
Yeah.
The funds are open for competition every month. So if the development team is not doing a good job, they are going to get defunded, and someone else will get funded and work. So it's a very fair system that promotes constant improvement and competition, and it doesn't take away all the money in the beginning like other funding methods around.
Very interesting. So you said that anyone can submit a proposal. How does that work?
You do that from the wallet, or there are certain websites that will help you do that. The only requisite you need to do is pay 5 Dash as a fee to the network to make a proposal. This is an spam prevention measure, because if not, anyone could fill up the system with fake proposals. So you need to pay 5 Dash. You say how much you want to get paid if your proposal passes, and you give it a name. And then there are other sites that take that information from the network and let you expand on the content. And then you go to dashcentral.org or our forum, and usually the proposal owners there expand on what they want to do. They discuss with the community, they provide more information, they answer these questions. So that way the masternodes can vote on what proposals get the funds. It's a very fair system, very interesting. It also it's not perfect. There are obviously some limitations. We've also used it in the past, and we're going to use it again for polling the community. Sometimes when there is a disagreement in a community, everyone claims to represent the community. We saw that in Bitcoin. Everyone was the community and represented the best interest of the project. But there is no way to really prove that. In our case, what we do is a proposal without a budget. So it's just a question, and masternodes vote, and then you have the opinion of the people who are more invested in the project, and then you can act accordingly. We decided that way if we grew the block size, and instead of being for months or years discussing if this is convenient or not, we solved the question in a couple of days. Everyone voted, and then it was very clear that everyone wanted to grow the block. So it's a very transparent and fair system. We are going to be doing implementing a new visual identity, a new logo and image for the project. And we are going to vote on a few options, and people will be able to decide which one they want to use in the future. And that way you settle discussions, because vote is law. If everyone has voted something, we all respect that. And that's very useful and efficient way of solving conflicts.
So do you, that's very interesting. Do you see that as a potential for corporate governance, for example, in standard organizations like that? Would companies be able to incorporate such a system using the blockchain?
The design of the system has been copied many times. There are many other projects that have copied our code. Likewise, we forked Bitcoin. Many other projects have forked Dash and implemented a system similar to ours. A company could do it in a private blockchain, I guess so. The thing is, private blockchains are not as powerful as public ones, because they only get the security they can provide directly. It's not that good. But I guess some people could try to do something with this and implement it in a more open way. I think there are ways to do it, and probably we'll see that in the future. It's a very early stage of this space. But yeah, system in which stakeholders are the ones voting makes perfect sense.
Yeah. All right. So can you share what challenges lay ahead of Dash for the near future?
Yeah, the future for us is all about this new release we are launching in 2018 in different phases during the year. We codename it Evolution. This will bring all these new features. We've already started releasing the first demo last week, and some code updates will come through the year. So we'll have something working and functional public this year for sure. And that's all we are focused on at the moment. In parallel, we are doing extensive partnership activities. We are growing the team to be able to execute better. At the moment, we are almost 60 people. No, not almost, we are around 60 people working for the project in the dashboard team. And that's just one of the organizations in the ecosystem. As I explained before, there are other organizations also getting funded from this system. So dashboard team is just the one that does most of the coding, but it's just one of them. It's, as I said, it's this new release that gets us very excited because we believe it will be the start of a very different phase, because users will finally be able to use crypto without needing to be geeks.
Yeah, very nice. So as we are coming to a close, will you share your thoughts on how the market and adoption of cryptocurrencies will develop in 2018?
I think 2018 is going to be a transition year. After all the explosive growth in 2017, I think this year is going to be a year for cleanup and a year for putting some order in the space. There are many great projects that launched last year, but there are many terrible ones. And the practices that some of them used to launch their ICOs or to promise things that could not be promised has harmed us all. We've seen already some regulatory pushback. I think we'll be seeing more of that during 2018, but I think that the serious projects, the ones that are here to stay, the one with a long-term view, will keep working through this year like we've done in other bad years in the past. 2014 was pretty bad, and the projects kept working and doing their thing. And hopefully once there is some of those very bad projects and actors will probably disappear. That's okay. It's a phase we are going through. In the beginning of the 20th century, there were thousands of automobile makers, and most of them disappeared, merged, or whatever, and then we had a very healthy automobile industry for a while. So I think we are at that phase that we'll see some consolidation, some cleanup. This last year was spectacular. The amount of awareness we got outside of the space was great, but it was all around investment, and I don't think that's good. Crypto is more than an asset class. It's something that can use and help people. So I think that this year, this investment part will cool down a little. The projects will keep working. We'll see adoption, especially in places where failed currencies, places like Venezuela. We are already seeing a huge traction over there. Venezuela is currently our third country by web traffic in the dash.org website, and it's a very small country. Wow. And we are seeing a lot of interest from there. We have also a very interesting project going on in Zimbabwe where inflation is in the thousands. So I think in those countries where there are failed currencies, we'll see a lot of adoption this year. And from there, I believe it will spill down to connected economies. Also, some very specific use cases that benefit a lot from cryptocurrencies will probably see adoption during this year. In our case, I'm thinking, for example, the legal cannabis market in the US. Banks won't touch them because at the federal level, it's not legal, but it's legal in 29 states. So cryptocurrency is perfect for them because it can give them electronic money without a bank. So from that, I also think it will expand to connected spaces. But in the market as a whole, we'll probably see what we are seeing in these first few months. A very hard market, difficult. So what I recommend to everyone is keep your head down, keep delivering. Things will pass. This has happened before. We've had bad years in the past. 2013 was great. 2014 was not. 2015 was also kind of transition. 16 started to improve. 17 was wonderful. 18 has started with the wrong foot. That's okay. These all come in phases. Obviously, for those people that entered into this space in November, December, January, I feel their pain because if they invested and They are obviously underwater at the moment. Just keep your patience. If you really believe in this, get involved. Don't focus so much on investment. Do some work in the space. There are plenty of things to do. This is only getting started.